everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and we're back to talk more Leftovers Season 2. We're on Episode 3. It is called Off Ramp. Full spoilers if you have not seen this episode. As you can see, I'm not wearing my Leftovers shirt. I've been feeling a little bit like I'm not actually reviewing anything. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm putting too much on myself, but this has been a really hectic week. Fitting in the top 6 Expanse episodes, which was my choice to do, by the way. You know, like I'm the one who put it out there to do, and I'm the one who forced myself to do all that. But I've been forcing myself to do a lot this week, and it just kind of made me feel like, you know, I've been questioning a lot of things, and I'm happy. Okay, I'm not a sad guy, but I'm just kind of being serious for a second, and I want to make sure that I'm actually reviewing things and not just recapping. So before we get into this episode, I want to actually review it. I actually want to talk about it before we talk about it, if that makes any sense. So I didn't even bother. I've been wanting to wear this shirt. I love my Weapon X shirt, and so I didn't put on the Leftover shirt. Plus, Kevin and Nora aren't in it anyway. But this is Off Ramp, and this one's a heavy. Now, I remember saying many times that Tommy doesn't really have an arc after season 1. I guess I remembered it kind of wrong because this is a little bit of an arc. But there is a point, and I'm not wrong, where Tommy just basically kind of disappears from the show. And it becomes about Nora and Kevin, mostly in season 3. And what do I think about this? Because I do think that this is naturally what had to happen. Everybody's getting their story. The first episode, we get to meet, you know, Regina King's family, the Murphys. And in the second episode, we get to see how Nora and Kevin and Jill all got to Jordan, Texas. And now in episode 3, we get to see what happened to Laurie and Tommy after the events of season 1. And one of the things that's the best about season 2 is when they're not dealing with Jordan, Texas. When we're talking about our main core of characters from season 1 and the things that happened after the fires and the riots in Mapleton. When we get to Jordan, it gets a lot more like, I feel like I like the season a little bit less. And it's mostly because, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the John Murphy character and his whole arc. It feels like a little bit too much like we have 2 Kevins on the show. And while I think that all those actors are great, I don't really, every time we get away from our main characters, for the most part, I kind of tune out and get a little angry when the other characters kind of budge their way into this story. Especially after this season's over and they basically become background anyway. And that's a story plot that I just didn't happen to like. So, and like I said, nothing against the actors. I think Kevin needed those characters to get to where he's going in some way, but is top notch in this episode. The furthering of the fact that the guilty remnant are still around. Like, just because they burned down some houses doesn't mean that they just stopped being a thing. Just because Patty's dead doesn't mean that anything changed, really. They're still going. Maybe not quite as strong, because we never really feel like, I don't really feel like they have much of an impact after season 1 as much as it has the impact of what happened in season 1 has on the characters that experienced it with the guilty remnant. Especially Laurie. Amy Brenneman really is a great, outstanding actress. I didn't really watch much of Goliath season 3, but what I saw of her in it, she was pretty great. And I forget the name of the actor who plays Tommy, but he's really good too. And I hope that, I haven't seen him in much since The Leftovers. But this episode does a really good job of setting up like how difficult it is for Laurie to come back from where she was. And doing it honestly. And seeing that, you know, the repercussions of being part of the GR aren't just things that affect her family, but also affect her, you know, how she's going forward and how people are going to look at her for the rest of her life. And so Off Ramp is a really great episode because in some ways, you know, in order to fix the guilty remnant problem, they have to revisit an old problem or an old issue to get to that. It's nice to see that Holy Wayne gets a little bit of a cameo in this. The actress who plays Susan does a very understated performance. Uh, has a very tragic guilty remnant survivor. um, and Liv Tyler comes back with a vengeance, and like she's taken the GR to a whole different level. Um, she's a villain. She's a straight up villain. See, Patty was delusional. Patty thought she was doing good. She thought she was helping. Meg, on the other hand, she's just straight up bad. She's not. She's more of like a terrorist almost. Now you could say what Patty did was kind of domestic terrorism in a way. But again, I feel like motivations play a big role in that. And like I said in season one, Meg's problems go deeper. Like I don't think she really believes in the base GR thing. I think Meg's got some serious mental issues outside of that. And I'm sure that somebody, if you have your own ideas about that, go ahead and tell me what they are. Don't insist upon themselves at me. All right? These are my ideas. Just like if you have your own ideas, don't put them as fact, because I'm not presenting mine as fact. All right? That's one of my biggest pet peeves is like when you get a negative comment and it's really not about the comment. It's how it's put. As if you're wrong and I'm right. I'm just telling you how I feel and what I think. So let's just get it down. I had a bad comment the other day, so I'm just going to take it out on this video. And wow. Here we go. I have nothing running in the background, and my video is getting blurry, and that pisses me off. That's another problem that we've been having is that the camera's been acting up again at the lowest setting. I don't know if it's because I'm moving or talking too fast. I don't know. So, Off Ramp is a really, really good episode. I'm trying to think of any other things to say about it, like just a general review, before we get into talking about it properly. But we open with this drum solo, and jazz plays a big part of this soundtrack, along with the piano instrumental of the Pixies' "Where Is My Mind." So we find out that the GR is still a thing, and that Tommy and Laurie are working to get members out and deprogram them. So he goes in undercover and gets people that are willing to leave and see what else is out there, get a chance at life again. Is not just trying to fix others but herself and others that believed in the guilty remnant. So they bring this Susan girl in, and it's a little bit at a time here. The whole thing with the Nicorette gum, like filling the bowls with Nicorette gum to like help the people that have the cigarette cravings, is really great. We can also see how much Tommy is affected by Holy Wayne still. That he's watching these old videos, maybe trying to see like what's wrong with me. How did I get fooled by this guy? How did I spend all this time running around? Just like his mother, got sucked into the guilty remnant. Also, he's pounding booze, man, and she's like not saying jack about it. Like, I don't know if it's because she's afraid that if she says anything, she'll push him away, just like Jill. But dude's cranking back the booze pretty hardcore, and she wants his help going undercover. Like, she does try to tell him that he needs to kind of probably not find a new way to get people out, because they know his face now, but he's not really hearing any of that. So that's a bit of like I said, foreshadowing. And blah blah blah. The landlord. Well, okay. First off, we find out Laurie's writing a book about her experiences with the guilty remnant, and this actually brings Susan out a little bit because she's doing it for herself, but also like to help, probably make a few bucks too. But this landlord that comes in, they do a really, really good job of making this guy like the sleaziest of the sleazy. All right, hey everybody. I had to do a little break on that because the camera, too many people are using the internet in my house on a Friday night, or Thursday night, I should say. Got my days all screwed up. So I had to cut, I had to edit that, and we're back. So for like a split second for you, it's like literally uh, like 12 hours later. So we have the landlord here shaking her down. They really this guy does such a great job of being slimy. Um, but I mean, it's his business, right? It's actually his right. She's got people squatting in her house, in his building, taking care of them. And while we sympathize with her, it's they sell him and how bad he is and how slimy he acts. Taking her bagels. Uh, that you side with her more than him just because of how gross they make him, even though he's completely in the right. um, so there's I lost my train of thought because okay, she's hiding people from the GR, and the GR they barge in uh, into their meeting to intimidate the person that left the guilty remnant, Susan, or anybody else that's in that room. And that's very culty. That is a very culty tactic to try to pressure somebody back, to try to take them back. And this is something that's actually, I can speak on. Not completely from my part, but because as you guys might know, anybody that watches my channel knows that I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and I completely find them to be a cult. I was in it. That's why I can say it. Okay? Anybody that disagrees with me, fine. You can disagree with me all you want, but I was there. Okay? And their tactics were, when I left, right, I bailed. I completely took off so that basically nobody could find me. But my sister, on the other hand, she stayed behind, and that's one of my greatest regrets, is not trying to see if my sister wanted to come with me. I just didn't know at the time who to trust. It's the kind of religion, that kind of thing, makes you paranoid. And so I just took off. And I left her behind. And what I heard from her later was when she left, when she eventually smartened up and left, she would have them come to her work. They would be in the parking lot waiting for her. They would come inside, I think, to her job, where it got to be really creepy. From my end, I just still occasionally have people that still will come to my house. I had them come to my job about a year ago to try to get me to come back. And while they do it in that nice kind of way, they're not intimidating like the GR was. That's culty behavior, and like I said, it's something that I still think about, and it just creeps me out because from my perspective, they're thought of like the J Dubs. They're thought of to be this really wholesome, nice Mormon-y type religion that nobody talks about. Except for why do they wake me up on Saturday mornings? But there's more to it than that, trust me. So Tommy, this kind of gets back to business as normal. Tommy goes back into another GR group, and Laurie gets Susan here to finally reunite with her family. And she has her doubts about things, but, she still gets her to go through with it. And Tommy then, he gets a new recruit. He's the guy that he had a watch on when he got confronted at the GR. And so he could tell that he hadn't completely let go of his other life, that he still had ties. So he uses that as a way to get this guy out. And if you listen in the background of this episode, they're talking about Australia and how there's this guy who drowned in Perth, Australia, and then came back to life and says he can't die. That is huge season 3 foreshadowing. So much of season 3 has to do with Australia and and drowning, and it comes up here in season 2 as well. Um, we also get, this is where the second episode and the third episode meet up, where Tommy and Jill's meetup happens, and we get to see Laurie's perspective of her missing Jill. Like, she's got Tommy back, but she knows that her relationship with Jill is still pretty much flatlined. So when she sees like this mother and her kid, she's seeing what she lost. Um, but when she gets back from one of her meetings, she finds out that the landlords kicked them all out, and everything's, they're all out on the street, including, but the guy kept her laptop, and on her laptop is where she kept her book. It's her only copy. It's a rookie mistake. Honestly, if something happened to my laptop, I don't know what I'd do. Because, you know, I don't have like backups of certain things. I have like files of my videos and stuff like that, but like my notes or whatever, I don't have a lot of things. So if I lost this, goodbye, Smirking Gun Reviews, like a backlog for the last 6 months. But then we get this, like, she snaps, right? She pretty much snaps, and she goes to his house. She goes to his house and breaks straight up into her house. She knocks on the door, like, no, she sneaks in. That's right. She sneaks into the house. They're playing jazz, and it's really crazy and chaotic. Meanwhile, I think he gave it to his son, and I think his son is, like, watching porn. I think he was watching porn. And he's like this little kid, and she goes in there and takes the laptop and leaves, and like they're chasing her out the door and everything. So Laurie's all amped up. She starts blasting stuff that sounds like Nine Inch Nails, and she sees two guilty Remnant people standing in the road. And now that she's just, she's that ramped up, she puts the car in. She parks, like she sits there for a second, and then parks it, and then she puts it back into drive and just runs them the fuck over. Like, one of them kind of gets almost out of the way. The other one, she full on hits, and she just keeps going. And I was like, wow, I forgot about this part. I forgot about this whole episode, to be honest with you. The next day, Laurie goes into like the second part of Susan's like recovery, where she meets with her and her husband at her house, trying to tell Susan, and and also to reassure the husband, like she's not going back. She's this is for real, and she's out, and you don't have to worry about her anymore. It's going to be still hard, but this is coming together. And then Tommy's found out. We had that foreshadowing. She warned him that they knew what he looked like, but he still kept doing it because, like I said, he's drinking a lot. I think his judgment is clouded. His anger, is clouded. And they dragged him away. They put him in a truck. And Meg, played by Liv Tyler, arrives. And this is creepy. This is really, really creepy because she pulls his pants down and pulls her panties off, and proceeds to rape him. He's confined and he can't stop her from having sex with him. And I think that she's sending a message to Laurie. This is how I say, she's a villain. Now, some people might say, how do you rape a guy? Well, this is how. And even though, like who wouldn't want Liv Tyler? Just saying. But, and also, here's a thing that just kind of bothers me, as far as like being consistent with the guilty remnant and how they are, right? It's a weird, gross thing to talk about, but when she takes off her underwear, they make a point of showing her take her underwear off, right? And she's got this perfect landing strip. And I was thinking, the GR don't care about this kind of thing. Man, she's been in there for a year. She would not look all perfect down there. I'm just saying. Maybe that's an odd thing to focus on, but you know, you think about these things when you think about like what if to make if things don't make sense or whatever. So she's like, whatever. So after she rapes him, they throw him on the ground out on the pavement, cover him in gasoline, and she's about to like look like she's gonna light him on fire. But then what would be the point of that, right? Why do that? Like it's a message. So I mean, I wouldn't, I guess in the moment you'd be freaked out, but she just lights a cigarette and says Meg says hi, and leaves. That's completely effed. So when Laurie comes back and she finds Tommy, he's like, what are we doing? Like, this is not working because the GR, like he tells Laurie what happened. Who's Meg? But he's like, look, what they are doing, like him being inside and hearing all the way that they talk and being in many different chapters over and over and over again. He's like, what they say is kind of making sense. Which does not, which Laurie does not like at all. Meanwhile, Susan's life they show her kind of in a little montage of her life already starting to unravel. These little things that bother her, like sitting in a fancy restaurant, eating a deboned fish, going on a vacation, and eventually she just, they're on like, it looks like a little trip, and he's going through the bag, the husband's going through the bag of like snacks and stuff, so it looks like they're on a road trip somewhere on a vacation, and she just closes her eyes and drives them straight into an oncoming semi truck and kills everybody. It's like she saw no point after a while of going on without the GR, because what they talk about, like what Tommy says is, they're giving people something. The GR giving people something, and what are we giving to these people to fill that void when they get out? We're not giving them anything. We're just getting them out. And then there's the book editing process, where she goes to meet the book editors that want to publish her book, and they're completely like Hollywoodizing her story, wanting, oh, you need to do this, you need to explain about the smoking, and we need to know how it felt for this, and all these gaps that aren't in the book. And while they have a point on a couple of things, it's because they're trying to make entertainment. They're trying to sell the book. And what they found is hers is just lacking the spiciness that, that is the truth of her story, isn't the spicy part of it. But when they ask her, what do these people like believe? They're fucking whack jobs. And how do you feel about it? And this guy just keeps pushing and making it, really slimy sounding. She snaps and just starts beating on this guy and ends up in jail. So Tommy bails her out, and she's basically, Laurie and Tommy are at this really low point. And Tommy says that moment, like, well, she's like, the GR wouldn't jump out of the way. They still won't get out of the way. They still let this happen. And why are we losing? And that's when he says, they're giving them something. We aren't filling that void. Let's give them something. So at the next meeting, Laurie tells her story about what the guy was talking about in the book editing process, which was Jill being in the fire and her husband getting her out and realizing, she knew Patty, and Patty said something bad was going to happen, and then it did, and she was floundering, and she went with it, and the next thing she woke up, next time she realized what was going on, it was her daughter was about to burn to death. And then Tommy, on his part, takes over and talks about his story with Holy Wayne. And I love this because as he starts talking about his experience with Holy Wayne, it's like, I think it's the first time she's hearing the full story about what he went through with Holy Wayne. And she kind of gets this look on her face like, what? Like, and he talks about how Holy Wayne could touch you and take away your, problems.
And he says that he learned it from Holy Wayne. And that who wants a hug? And he proceeds to start letting people hug him. And that's what they're giving the people from that leave the GR is a new Holy Wayne. It's Holy Tommy. And it's telling one lie to help people get over another. It's a temporary fix. But I mean, their mission is to get people out of the GR. And I guess believing that a hug can save your life is better than killing yourself slowly for smoking without any purpose, and putting mannequins of dead people in people's houses, things like that. So I don't know. It's like, is it a harmless lie? I don't know, but that's the end of the episode, and it's how they decided to combat the GR, one lie for another. And it's pretty powerful stuff. There's a lot of really powerful stuff in this episode. And like I said, I've said over and over and over again, The Leftovers is not a love fest. It's heartbreaking. It's drenched in sadness and loss. But it's fantastic and hypnotizing and mesmerizing. And I just never could stop watching it. It is one of the best shows I've ever seen. And it continues to be so, even though I don't like everything about every episode or every character. So, if you did like this review, though, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe to the channel. We just started doing The Expanse Season 4. We're still doing His Dark Materials. We've also got Mandalorian, which is completely opposite from this. Most of my stuff is kind of lighter. We do have Crime Story from 1986 starring Dennis Farina that we cover. Pretty deep dive into that as well. If you can find me on Twitter, it's at reviews_gun. If you are so inclined, you can donate to the channel and help make it better by going to paypal.me/smirkinggunreviews. Otherwise, this is Rob saying we'll be back next week with episode 4 of The Leftovers Season 2. So have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.